Well, that's a good start. It's all flipping blurred. Hello and welcome. Alan Plum here again with a little more from Shed Engineering. And seeing as we've been looking at water or experimenting with water effects, I thought I'd better experiment with doing a pond. As you can see, it's just a simple mock-up, and this took approximately 20 minutes to do. Now, my personal gripe, if you want to call it that, has been about water being so flat. And most people use the product called realistic water. And again, you only seem to be able to get a flat mill pond finish with it. And waves and ripples, etc., are almost impossible to represent. So I experimented, and in my last video I showed how a simple polythene freezer bag could be used to get ripples and waves to quite good effect. But on a pond such as this, you don't want waves or even ripples. They would even be too much. But in my opinion, you don't really want it to be a mirror finish or looking like a piece of glass either. Now, this is a piece of acetate sheet, and when you have a mirror finish like this, as you can see, you get crystal clear reflections. And when it's too transparent, you also have the problem that you can see right to the bottom. If you were using realistic water, you would have the option to colour it on the different layers as you build it up, but that's quite skillful to get it looking realistic and sort of a bit murky. So this is my take on the pond, and it may be a possible alternative. I'm not sure what you think of it, but it's got some very fine texture, if you can call it texture. You know what I mean. The when you get down low, you get the little sort of crisscrossy, glinty lines. It's also quite cloudy, so you hardly need to dig a hole out like I have. I bet you could just lay it straight on to the baseboard and paint a patch underneath it different colours. Of course, as soon as I said that, I realised it might be another simple option, so I've had to break off, mock it up, photograph it, upload the photographs. So let's call this option 1. The baseboard underneath has been painted dark in the centre and lighter towards the outside, and a very thin plastic bag, a bit like a doggy bag, has been laid over it. Now that's seemed a little bit see-through, and so I got another piece of the thin plastic bag and placed it over the top of that one, and that's what you have there. So you've got the little creases, which obviously represent ripples and what have you on the surface of the water, and it's obviously a little bit murky. Very difficult to photograph. Sometimes it's a full reflection and you get absolutely nothing. So in this version I'm using building foam to dig a hole out for the pond, and then as you can see I'm painting it darker in the middle, lighter towards the outside. Then I'm using a very thin plastic bag, a bit like a doggy bag or a sandwich bag, and I'm using 2 thicknesses. That is secured across the pond using duct tape, and then as normal I go round with a coat of glue before applying the filler, and that's the same foam filler as I've used, you've seen me use previously. You need to actually put a little bit of landscape in, or otherwise it looks totally odd. So there we go. After about 20 minutes, that's what I ended up with. I have given it a light wash of green, which I'm not sure about. I'd don't like that, and in some photographs I've wiped that off, and I think that's quite a reasonable representation of water. My only concern is that there's no depth to it. With the two thicknesses you can't see down into the bottom. Very easy and simple to do, and you do get quite a nice grey colour, the type of reflection you'd get from the sky. But I say, my only concern, there was not a lot of depth to it. There you can still see the green paint that I've gone over it with. There I've removed the green paint, but I say you still can't see right to the bottom. Not that you would in any pond in actual fact. But because I like those little lines on the surface of the plastic bag, I decided to cut away the top layer so that we'd just got a single layer. I then had to fiddle around and retighten it, but this is what we then ended up with. So you have got a little bit more depth. It's probably not as tight as what I would have liked, but at least it gives you an idea of what one thickness then looks like. You have almost got to go with your first impressions in the opening shots, because once you know it's a plastic bag, it's hard to stop thinking of it as a plastic bag just stretched across a hole. But I can't think of anything else that would give them very fine lines and subtle texture, which I think definitely adds something. So here I'm just ripping off the landscape to put in the acetate sheet, and you saw the photographs of that earlier. That gives another example of a crystal clear pond finish. And the obvious problem is with that is that you can see straight down to the bottom, so you've got to be an absolute master at painting, but even then there's still no cloudiness, and so it's hardly realistic, or you get a full reflection and not a ripple or line on the surface. So my options for a cheap and easy pond are acetate sheet, which is crystal clear and you can see straight to the bottom. It can look quite pretty, but it's hardly realistic. A painted baseboard with one or two sheets of plastic laid over that, or a hole that is painted with again one or two sheets of plastic laid over that. I honestly don't think seeing into the water is important. To me, you only ever see the surface, and what you see is very subtle movements, and to get anywhere close to being realistic you need very fine lines and tiny ripples to give the impression of movement, and I think a simple plastic bag goes a long way to giving that good degree or impression of some kind of movement. I don't know what you think, but I hope it's given you some food for thought, and I hope my crude mock-ups have given a reasonable impression to what you might get if you try any of these options. I was considering trying to model breakers on the seashore, but I think I'll give that one a miss. Thank you to all the new subscribers, that's very much appreciated. I hope you found something of interest, and as always, many thanks for watching.